Oh, they've done it! Steven Tirada, an instant hero! Can you believe it? Plenty attacking! No! The comeback is complete! A stunning second half from Schalke!
Blau und Weiß sein Leben lang. Herzlich willkommen zurück auf SchalkeMerica. I'm your host, Richard Carmen. Joining me as always, co-host Jack Mangan in your nice kit there. I like it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yeah, cheers to you. Not that there's much to celebrate at the moment. Certainly not a victory Monday.
It's true.
But entering a new era of Schalke, as there is, of course, a managerial change to discuss, or I guess a future managerial change, as it were, as the new manager has not yet been announced. But the Kramer era is well and truly over, finally.
Yeah. Leave it to Schalke to do it the day after our podcast, right? We talked about it last Tuesday, where we said Kramer should be out. He needs to be out. And sure enough, the next morning we wake up, he's gone. The race to find a new manager was fast and furious, so we were so to believe. But they did not find one by the weekend, and so Matthias Kreutzer, who took over last year with Buskins, was at the helm this weekend. I was not surprised about that part. Were you?
I don't know. I mean, early indications, it seemed like they maybe had somebody lined up. So I was kind of expecting that there may have been a manager in place before the weekend. But then they ultimately, changed course on that and announced that Kreutzer was going to be taking over, which I think probably all the Schalke faithful are relatively fine with, having him as interim. He's been on the staff for quite a while now. Interesting in that there still is not an announcement. We were thinking maybe tonight. And hopefully maybe tomorrow. But it's interesting. I think the primary two guys, right? Rice is one of them who's kind of been in the mix since during the summer, actually, before the season started. And so from one angle, you could say like, where there's smoke, there's fire. Like his name's getting brought up, so maybe they're locking him up. But at the same time, if he's been in the picture for long enough, you would think that they would have already got him under contract by now. You know what I mean? Like, given how long that Kramer's been fired already, and they've been working. Yep. If Rice has been on the short list, so it makes you wonder if something else is actually going on.
Before I continue with that, someone's ears must have been burning. El Waflo, who's in the chat, we did promise next Victory Monday we would plug your music, but we haven't won yet. So maybe this next weekend coming up, but we'll keep our promise there. The manager position seems to be a hard one to fill, right? There's no funds, maybe no candidates. Who wants to come to this fire that seems to be happening here?
Depleted squad at the moment. Depleted
squad, aging a striker that can or cannot score in the league. So many questions, right? And so Kreutzer steps up to be the manager of the job. The selection, I wasn't expecting much of a difference, honestly, in this one. The lineup that we had is fairly standard. Matriciani at center back was interesting. Schwoloff, who anyone who's a fan or a supporter like I was, has probably off his ship at this point because howler after howler, game after game. But some other interesting portions of the lineup, Iden was inserted, which was nice. Didn't really contribute much. I mean, honestly, what's up, Pascal? Look out. Interesting lineup. I think it started out well, right? First half, I thought was good. Bulter had a freaking sensational goal assisted by Iden, offsides. Bulter scored again, offsides again, or something like that. But overall, the first half, I thought it was pretty decent. I thought we were the better team, honestly, of the two teams in that first half. I mean, what do you think about the lineup and how the first half shaped up?
I mean, certainly a funky lineup, but I think sort of pragmatic in a lot of ways from Kreutzer. I think his approach to this game almost certainly would have been just don't lose as much as possible. Just try to get out of here with a draw or something. So I actually kind of viewed that, despite what the graphics shows, I actually kind of viewed this more as like a 5-3-2. It looked like he was playing, Matriciani, Yoshida, and Brunner actually as sort of right center back. And then Iden as that right wing back opposite Oyan, and then the midfield three of Kral, who's often a little bit deeper, and then Kraus and Drexler supporting Bolter and Tirada in sort of a partnership up top. I mean, like I said, I think that approach makes a lot of sense for an interim game. But yeah, Schwoloff hasn't been good for most of the season. Made another big mistake today, which we'll talk about. And then you combine him and you look at like the three center backs from Matriciani, Yoshida, and Brunner, and at the same, that's what I was kind of talking about before Kramer got fired. It's like this is not a Bundesliga squad at the back at the moment. So yes, we feel like the team is potentially underperforming relative to the talent that we have, but at this point with the injuries and everything, I mean, it's just not Bundesliga level. It just isn't. So we need to get some reinforcements, or we need to get some people back from injury before I think we can really start realistically talking about finding a way to survive this season. Start of the year, with a healthy squad for the most part and a kind of full complement of options, I felt a little bit better about things. But at the moment, it's just there's only so much you can even ask of the squad at this point. Like Matriciani, should not be in this position, right? We're we're counting on him in this kind of way, and obviously that's not even Bruno's position, and Yoshida is. Maybe we're moving to a back three to cover for Yoshida, who recently in a back two has not been good, has been kind of found out a couple of times. So, interesting lineup for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Look out, Eric. Interesting first half. It went into the half 0-0. I mean, I thought we were the best team in the first half. Well, slightly. We played better. Had the 2 goals. It would have been nice to have some luck, but no, obviously, luck wasn't on our side in this one. So 0-0 at halftime. Coming out of the break, howler, the first howler of the game for Schwolow from no man's land to start shooting from basically midfield. It seemed like gets a shot, has a clear shot on Schwolow, has no one really in front of him, and he completely misses it underneath his arm. 1-0. This is something we've been talking about. I know you've been talking about extensively this season. It's like, yes, he has some great moments, but he misses the easy things, or what we perceive to be easy. And something like this, where a goalie 100% has to have, fluffs it 100%, and we're down, which we cannot afford to be down.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, the shot from Tussard, it's hit hard, obviously, but it's hit pretty much right at him.
Yeah.
From quite a ways out. There's just no reason why, as a Bundesliga goalkeeper, you should be allowing that to get through. It's not into a corner. He's not particularly unsighted, and even if he is, that seems to be a consistent issue for him. Yeah. More than most people. So I don't know, maybe that's just variance, and it's going to come back to some sort of median, but I just, that seems to be a constant issue for him. So I think it's an absolute howler, as you said. I think it's a really bad mistake. I think it's pretty much entirely Schwolow's fault. I was looking earlier. I mean, we have I think it was something like 18 expected goals allowed this season, and we've conceded 26. And when you think about how many shots, or even non-shots, Schwolow has allowed to turn into goals, a decent chunk of that difference between what's been expected and what's ultimately gone in the back of the net, I think you can attribute directly to Schwolow. So, I mean, personally, I'm at the point of the season where I think a change needs to be made, straight up. I would rather just see Fairman at this point. Maybe that's naive of me. Maybe at this point he's even significantly below Schwolow's level, but Schwolow's not providing it. I'd rather just go with the guy who has some affiliation with the club. And
longer.
You know what I'm saying though. You're I don't know. It's tough. I think we need to look at it. Maybe Longer gets some minutes. I have no idea, but I think at this point, Schwolow's not an option. The game plan under Kreutzer, not as long ball heavy as Kramer had been, but still, somewhere in the vicinity of a little bit less than a third of our passes are long balls. And if you look at, Schwolow, I think he had 26% completion on his balls over 30 yards.
That's a record for him.
I mean, just you know what I mean? Just atrocious. I mean, so yeah, and that's not entirely his fault. If he's being asked to do that to some extent, I don't know if still Kreutzer was trying to suggest that, but on so many levels, he's causing problems at the moment. So I think we need to look at another goalkeeper if we can.
So 2 things kind of leads me to believe that Kramer was asking for the long ball, because in this game, we saw a lot of the passes to midfield angled that we kind of talked about before, like Ederson and some of these guys, goalkeepers like the passing can do, and some of them worked. So maybe this was a long ball mentality by Kramer and just shoot it up. But that's the point. The point would be that I agree with you. I think Schwolow needs to go. And I don't remember who made the poll on Twitter, but they're asking, of the 4 goalkeepers we have, right? Schwolow, Fairman, Longer, and the young kid, I forget his name. Who would you want in their next game? And Schwolow had the lowest amount of percentage of points in that. Even that young kid had the higher percentage. It was Fairman and then Longer. We were at a point a couple years ago where Fairman was a starter, a legend that he is, and he was having howlers. And we said, you're costing us games, you got to get out of the starting lineup. And he did. And I think this is the same situation here where Schwoloff is costing us games. Clearly, with that's like 100% howler. And it's time for Fairman to come in, or even longer if you want to. Longer played well, but put Fairman in. I mean, at this point, it can't get any worse in terms of goalkeeping, because save that should be made. Now, granted, Schwoloff makes some great saves here and there, but he gives up howlers, and we can't afford. And Fairman has some issues or whatever in the past where he kept making these mistakes, but you got to give him another shot. Why not? I mean, something's going to change, like you said. We did that with the manager. We also got to do this with the goalkeeper, I think, and that's a good start to make going forward. New manager, whomever he is, whenever he comes on board, should look at that as one of his first changes he's going to make, right?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, I think if there is an emphasis, you know, in the transfer market in January, it's probably going to be at replacing, you know, the center back injuries and then also some attacking help. So I think it's probably unlikely that, like, you know, the goalkeeping area is going to be an area of focus in the winter. But yeah, it's certainly hurting us at the moment. And granted, I mean, I'm sure some of his mistakes have come in matches where we've conceded 3 or 4 goals, because that's been a consistent problem for us. So I'm not saying that, you know, all of these are resulting in a change in the result, but certainly resulted in one this weekend. I mean, that's a 1-goal game that we lose by. That should have been a draw. And I'm sure there was 1 or 2 other ones earlier, whether it was him trying to collect the ball in the air on a cross that he fumbles and goes in, that flipped a result, you know, from a win to a draw, or a draw to a loss, whatever the situation may be. So yeah, something that needs to be addressed early. And really quickly, just commenting on the first half, going back to that. I mean, I think I agree, though. I don't think we played too bad in the first half overall. Actually, I think Matriciani for the first 20 minutes actually looked good, or like fine, at least competently. He eventually got burned by Luke Bacchio, which, you know, is going to happen.
Conga too.
Yeah, I mean, he let up a bad opportunity, I think, in the 25th or something, but started okay. Yeah, just super unfortunate. I mean, the goal from Bolter, it's not like a particularly well-worked play. It's Bolter kind of hitting an overhit cross that finds its way to Iden crossing it back across. You know, it's just kind of a pinball kind of thing. But it's a brilliant hit from Marius Bolter, like legitimately a phenomenal finish. And then one of the best Bolter faces and celebrations I think we've seen since he joined the team, which we were treated to, and then unfortunately gets called off. And look, it's the correct decision, but it's one of those that makes you hate VAR, because the infringement quite literally had no impact on how that play developed. There was no advantage in any way, shape, or form that was gained from the touch that Drexler ultimately took that caused Bolter to be offside. So it is the correct call ultimately, and, you know, you can't complain about it, but it's just really unfortunate, because it strips away not only a brilliant goal from Bolter, but a very important goal in the context of the match and also our season. And then a couple minutes later, you know, Bolter finds the back of the net again, and that one's waved off. And once again, I think the correct decision, because Oweyan was going in for a shot, defender beats him to the ball, and Oweyan fouls him technically. So they had to call it back. But game could have been very much different if one of those two had gone our way, and then, you know, if Schwallow doesn't make the mistake, this is a different game. So props to Kreutzer overall. I mean, I know Hertha hasn't been performing particularly well, but, you know, the last 3 games of Kramer's tenure, last 4 games, I should say, I think it's a 4-0 to Leverkusen, a couple 3-0 losses, and then a 5-2 to you know what I mean? I mean, we're shipping a minimum of 3 goals a game, and Kreutzer, at least in his one match with a makeshift back 3, you know what I mean, featuring basically 2 right backs in the center back positions, is able to hold Hertha to, I mean, a pretty decent defensive performance, I think, all things considered.
Yeah, no, I agree about that 100%. And I agree with Eric. It was a little bit of anger. I think a whole lot of SchalkeMerica Nation, Schalke anger in that shot that he put unleashed is ultimately taken back. But yeah, it was team was hard done in. I mean, Molet. Before I get to the Molet goal, and before we get to the first goal, even though we just talked about it, I thought despite being 0-0, we looked good enough. I thought we could have carried that momentum. But I agree with you. Had one of those gone in, it would have changed the game completely. We could have ran away with the scoreline for all we know. But at the time, at halftime, I was like, okay, we're fine. We're with a better team at the moment. Keep this up, and we'll win. And then, of course, they score with a howler early in the second half. And we tried, and finally Molet with a wonderful goal in the 85th minute or something. You're like, okay, we're going to get a draw out of this one. Great. And then freaking Kanga bullies our defensive backs and just scores a goal, wins it at the death in the 88th. It's like, oh, come on, man, really?
Yeah. We'll get to that in a second. Real quick, shout out to Mullet. I think decent performance, decent substitute performance in the previous match as well. Providing some decent minutes off the bench recently. So shout out to him.
Yeah.
And took his goal very well. And it comes out of nothing, essentially. Comes off a throw-in.
Yeah.
Oweon throws it into the box, gets knocked back out to Mullet, who just kind of sizes it up and kind of half volleys it low with pace into the corner, beats the keeper. Very well taken. So credit to him. As for the goal against for Hertha, it's super unfortunate because the thing about when you're playing a team like Hertha in this moment is they don't really have many ideas either. And so they're looking to get you on the counter and get in behind you. But when you're playing a team like Schalke, which doesn't have possession, and is going to be ceding possession to you, I think that actually kind of messes with Hertha's build-up mechanism a little bit. And I think that's part of the reason they actually struggled in this game is because they weren't really able to do what they wanted to do because the opponent they were playing was so inept. Unfortunately, one of the only times they actually do end up getting behind, it's right at the end of the game. And that's what allows them to score. Matriciani comes to put pressure on Kanga, I believe. And then kind of like the lone man back is Yoshida. And I think just as what happened, maybe like in the previous game, he's done this a couple times now. This is the Stambouli step up, the Stambouli step. You know what I mean? The ball gets played essentially a little bit, and Yoshida can stay exactly where he is, keep the entire play in front of him, and it's probably not an issue. And instead, he pushes forward, Kanga spins Matriciani, and then there's no cover behind. He gets played in, and it's off to the races. And, I mean, in my opinion, it's not even really Matriciani's mistake. Like I said, he was defending that initial ball well, gets them to cycle it elsewhere, and it's Yoshida allowing that space that ultimately kind of gets him beat. So, pretty cheap one-on-one goal to concede at the end. Very disappointing. You would have liked to think that after having a decently solid defensive performance, you finally get back into the game and then you don't concede something as easy as that. But that's just kind of the way it's been going for us this season. And yeah, unfortunately, Hertha steal this one late and get out of there with the win. And I don't think they were particularly impressive though.
No,
on the day, I thought we did all right, all things considered.
Statistically, it was pretty even all the way across the board. I mean, XGs is the only big difference, and it was honestly a couple of mistakes from us. I mean, the Howler probably had nothing. Probably Howler kept it lower, honestly, because it was a shot that should have been saved. 2-1, we lose again. I wasn't expecting. I was hoping for a new manager bump, even though he's not technically new, but it didn't happen. And I wasn't expecting necessarily when I was expecting a reaction. I saw the first half. Second half, we kind of dropped off and let Hertha do their thing, and that's what was the worrisome thing. Like after that goal happened, heads dropped, and then Hertha started gaining confidence and they're building wave after wave. Before in the first half, it was more like each team taking chances. It was Hertha wave after wave, and I was like, God, this is not good. We're settling back in. It's that mental thing, and eventually we did get a goal late, and they got one back, but mentality-wise, we're so fragile at the moment. And last year we didn't have this. Times that we going down, we just fought right back, and we're struggling at the moment, and need to find a new manager. I don't know where they're going to find it. Some names are coming up. Obviously, I think a Sport Eins or somebody came out with a long list of names, but a bunch of people dropped off automatically, like Bruno Labbadia and a bunch of other guys. But we'll see who comes along here. But to wrap up this game, I don't know, man. It's just it's another frustrating game that we seem to have a lot in the last 5+ years. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. You would have liked to be able to take advantage of an opponent like Hertha in this moment, but because we have Freiburg coming up, and that's we'll probably beat Freiburg. That'll make no sense. That's what will happen. Right? We'll randomly beat Freiburg, who's like playing very well this season, obviously. No, but whoever the manager is when he comes in, if we do have a new manager appointed before that game, they're going to be in for a tough fixture right off the bat, and one that they're probably going to have to be looking at as sort of a developmental game in the sense of like trying to implement your ideas or whatever, and not really expecting much of a result. The problem is we're at the bottom of the table now.
I was just going to say that.
We no longer have Bochum below us.
They beat the top of the table Union.
Yeah, I mean it's 5 consecutive losses, is it not? I think. I mean, we've been slowly inching towards that. Whatever credit we had built up a little bit at the beginning of the season is now officially expired and wiped off, and we're in very bad shape. So I don't know. Gonna have to have sort of a miracle result against Freiburg, I think, which would be helpful to kind of steady the ship a little bit because we're in free fall and continue to be. And it might take a couple games to get things going with whoever ultimately gets appointed. You mentioned Labadia. I saw some sort of report, who knows if this is accurate, that he was interested in having a contract that was good for either division.
Okay.
And that was potentially a sticking point for Schalke, and that's why ultimately that didn't go through. I saw some report along those lines. I don't know if any of these are accurate. But outside of him, I think the major candidates are at the moment still Rice, like we said, and then also Petkovic, right? Most recently with Bordeaux, but then previously Switzerland. What are your thoughts on that rumor and that potential appointee?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I see Eric's comment that his Bruno Labadia's brother was his coach as a kid, which is interesting. Interesting claim to fame there. Yeah. Obviously, there's lots of names that were circulated out there. One of the ones we've heard for a long time, even when Frank Kramer was manager, was Thomas Rice. Thomas Rice was supposedly our number one pick, and we couldn't do it with Bochum. I don't know. We couldn't figure it out. And so we went with Frank Kramer, who was number 2. And then now his name's back on top of the list. He's done some good things with Bochum, but you can't overlook what he did this season. You say what you want. Maybe Bochum's a bad team. They started out 0-5, ended up getting fired this season. And it's always hard for me. I know he's done some good things at Bochum. To pick someone who got relegated that season from that league, same league, and bring him back. It's like, it didn't work already. Why is it going to change any different? Our team's depleted. We're hurting. Why would it work now? Right? Bochum probably in a better situation health-wise than we are. So there's even less reason for us to do well. And so that's an interesting one. I mean, and ultimately, whoever gets selected, I would back them just to give him a chance, just like we did for Kramer, right? We neither of us thought Kramer would do well. We said, give him a chance. We saw what did Arminia Bielefeld and previously, but let's see what he can do. We're going to back him, and we're going to do this with whoever the manager is. But Thomas Rice, I'm not so much behind him. And then the other guy, Vladimir Petkovic, I know him a little bit better. Obviously, Swiss national team manager for many years. Did well at Lazio and some other clubs, also most recently Bordeaux. He was also in a relegation battle, let go with them, but he was let go with them in February of last year, as opposed to Rice, who was let go this year. So I don't know if these are the only 2 candidates. Are these the 2 real candidates? I don't know. In the Sport 1 and Sky are mentioning them. If it was me, this is just me, Jack, between the 2, if these are the 2 candidates, I would probably go Petkovic. Because I remember his Swiss teams very well. I love the way they played. He made Brielle Mbola look good, right? And I just liked the way they played. They had a 3-4-1-2 or some kind of formation like that. Very offensive minded, made players better, developed youth players a lot. I like that stuff that he did. Will it translate? I don't know, but that's my inkling. What about you between the 2 guys?
Coach Lazio, didn't he, as well? Yeah. Prior to that,
did
Mr.
well.
Mr. Serie A.
Yeah, did well there.
I mean, listen, between like Rice and Petkovic, obviously Rice is the one who's been most recently in a managerial position. And, the bulk of the success that we'd be talking about with Petkovic, as you just mentioned, was his time with the Swiss national team. Sorry.
Yeah.
Which is different from club football.
Yeah.
How much do you want to suggest that those things are going to translate? I agree. Did have some decent success with Switzerland, got them into, respectable positions of various European tournaments and whatnot, given kind of their status in the game. Plays systems that you think could adapt to what Schalke have already been doing pretty easily, the 4-2-3-1 or a 3-4-1-2. So you look at some of the stuff he was playing most recently with Bordeaux, and I think there's pretty easy applications to Schalke's squad at the moment. But I don't know. I think Petkovic is maybe the slightly bigger name and maybe the slightly sexier hire, just because you have some of that World Cup, Euro tournament, shine from that's kind of associated with it. And Rice, obviously, it's just kind of like once again, we would back Rice, we would support, we'd give him a chance. We always try to do with the managers here, regardless of how we feel about them. It's just there's nothing about that would inspire you based on what has just happened with Rice. You know what I mean? Exactly. In the same way that Kramer was not in a good position before he got hired by Schalke, and we're all just kind of like, why should we be excited about this? And then the Kramer thing doesn't work out. So But as always, slim pickings. We have limited resources with which to pay managers, and we have limited talent with which to attract managers to come want to coach those players. And of course, now 18th position in the Bundesliga, not 13th, 14th, 15th. Literally at the bottom. There's a psychological element to that, I'm sure, for any manager that's going to come into, is literally saying you have to dig us out of the very bottom. And yeah, it's going to be tough.
I think that's the biggest element too, right? Because our friend of the show, Phil Bonney, who was on the call this weekend, he mentioned, I mean, yes, things are dire for both teams, Hertha and Schalke. The Bundesliga is so compact point-wise right now that you still have a chance. If whoever comes in goes on a run, you can easily bounce up on the table. I mean, you look at the table right now, we're on bottom, 18th on 6 points. You get 3 points, you're in 15th. You know, then you get a couple more wins, you're all of a sudden near mid-table. I mean, things can snowball really fast. We're really close. So this is the time to hit that mark and go. But yeah, the psychological factor is big. Schalke mentally as a unit, a club, a nation, if you want, we're all mentally fragile at the moment, and it shows in games like this. Against, you give up a weak goal against Hertha Berlin, and then all of a sudden the gameplay goes out the window because everyone's in panic mode. So it's a lot to get into, and I don't know who's going to be the man. We'll see who is selected, but yeah, it's going to be a big job for whoever's the manager. I will say this as a parting shot to Frank Kramer. I will give him respects or big ups because he could have done like Gramozis and anybody else previously who was fired and just said, pay me until my contract ends. He didn't. He withdrew, took a severance pay of $500,000 so that Schalke wouldn't have this overhanging in their head because they already got Gramozis on the books until end of the year. So I'll give Kramer that. I don't know if that was the intention or what was going on there, but he got severance pay for 500,000 euros.
Yeah.
So
it seemed like a pretty nice guy overall. So
once
again, we wish him well, and we're not dancing anybody's grave here for sure. So
no. But out of all this financial crisis that we're in, and part of it is because an old boss of our chairman of us, Clemens Tony's, he's back in our lives because rumor was that he reached back out to the club and said, hey, you need money for a manager or whatever? I got you. I'll help you out. And Schalke world went into a panic. Get the hell away from us. People were freaking out. They were freaking out so much that Schalke's PR guy, who's on Twitter, had to come out and be like, whoa, pump the brakes. So first he says, it's his name, Mark Siekman. He says, some context before misunderstandings arise. The club is in contact with Clemens Tony's, as well as with all the sponsors and sponsor representatives. In addition, Mr. Tony's is a member of Schalke and was the chairman of the supervisory board for a long time, but there are no negotiations for funds. He continued on. A completely normal exchange. I have received a number of inquiries about this via various channels. If there is more, we're always willing to help. But Schalke, I think, sent out an email as well. It's like, we're not entertaining this. This is just friendly chatter. That's all it is. Do you buy that? I mean,
first of all, bring up that photo of Tony's again, if you don't mind, that you just had us out. I mean, I love the smell of coal in the morning. What is this? Like he's wafting it in. It's a great.
It's
photo.
Schalke's burnt scalp on 18th place.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, listen, I think it is obviously amusing the immediate vitriol with which some of those rumors were hit on Twitter. Not surprising, given sort of the way that he departed, his affiliation with the club, or the level of affiliation he had, I should say. Yeah, I don't know. I think Schalke's in the midst of trying to build back sustainably. I very much doubt that they would take this moment of all possible moments over the past couple of years to then suddenly get some sort of direct cash injection from him that would cause their fans to get upset. I'm not particularly concerned about it, but obviously interesting story and something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And with if these two guys, Rice, I'm talking about, and Petkovic, if one of them were to get hired, which would cause the most outrage? I would guess it'd be Thomas Rice, but again, Schalke supporters would back whomever is his manager and give them a chance. I mean, for all we know, whoever it is, if it is Rice, for example, and he goes on and saves us from getting relegated and has a decent season, we're gonna be like, okay, whatever. First 5 games with Bochum, who cares? I mean, the positive, he did do well. Bochum, Poulter scored double-digit goals against him, so he means he knows how to play with big strikers, which would help Terodde as well, right? Kramer, by the way, I thought he looked pretty decent in the game, though he's mostly non-existent. He had some pace. He had pace that I didn't know he had. At times, I was like, "Well, who's this guy running down the pitch?" But it was Kramer. But nonetheless, yeah, we'll see. I fully expect an announcement probably the next 24 to 48 hours for manager. I don't know who will be. Patrick Berger, Andreas Ernst,
Jesse Marsch.
Jesse Marsch. It could be. It could be. But yeah, Zidane. Maybe with some funds. But yeah, no, it's we'll see. I fully expect an announcement here, but yeah, it's just been a crazy time, one thing after another lately, it seems like. And yeah, we'll see. Freiburg this weekend, number 2, 3 the table on Sunday. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know.
You ready for a butt kicking, sir?
Yeah, Strike. Oh, Strike. He's back in our lives.
All we can hope for is that it's the call an ambulance, but not for me meme for Schalke this weekend. Yeah, that's what we're going to be hoping for.
Eric says the one where he's eating the raw pork sandwich is also very cringe. Yeah, I remember that one. It is true. It is true. All right. Let's get out of here. Jack, I got to say, you look good in this Schalke blue here.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Nice to be rocking our colors for once. I don't actually whip out the jerseys on stream that often, but I should start doing that. There
you go. We also got some new merch coming. We won't talk about it just yet. We'll unveil it in due time, but keep an ear on the grindstone for that. I don't know, whatever you want to say.
An ear on the grindstone.
Jack, where can our followers find you on social media?
Oh man, I'm going to sit with that one for a bit. You can find me at JMMangan, JMMANGAN on Twitter.
Almost messed you up, but didn't quite.
Yeah, I recovered.
You can follow me at R_KHARMAN. We'll catch you on the next podcast. Probably like next watch along, which is on Sunday. Should be able to do that one. A little under the weather, as you can probably hear my voice, and almost got the Jack Mangan baritone here, but not quite. But yeah, catch you then. Or if news breaks, we may put out a short or something like that on YouTube. Who knows? But for Jack, I'm Richard. For the new manager, whoever you are, Glück auf.